Welcome to the 3 a.m. podcast.
What up, y'all?
I'm doing good. What's up, guys?
How's your day? How's everyone's day? On a scale of 1 to 10.
7.2.
Okay.
It was a weird day, but like I feel really good now that we're all here.
It's chill. No, actually, it's really busy,
Yeah.
but good busy. So that's chill.
Nice.
Nice.
I'm DJ.
I'm Charlie,
I'm Sean.
I'm Jordan.
and we are lucky to have with us tonight the beautiful and amazing.
Honorary guest. Honorary member.
Kev Stizzolini.
Okay.
Cut that.
It's Kevin from episode 5, Texas.
Shout out Green Bean Catering.
Shout out Texas.
I made a comment on an Instagram post.
Oh, yeah. I want to know. What
And
happened.
dude, it was wild because I don't usually comment things, and I just kind of look at stuff. But it was this post, and it was one of those videos of this might be the most disrespectful kid you ever see. You know, one of those weird videos or whatever, and some white kid. And so I was like, of course this kid's white. Like, ha ha ha, dude. The like arguments that ensued afterwards, like people got so offended. I was like, I'm white. Like what? Like.
What happened?
So this lady and this one dude start arguing. She's like, well, I'm white, and not every white family, not all parents are that irresponsible, or those kids are I was like, who cares? And then some girl was like, I'm actually Hispanic, and in Mexican culture, we are starting to see the younger generation act like this. I was like, who fucking cares?
Did you post this on Facebook?
No, it was on Instagram. There's like 50 something comments now, and I got like 140 likes on my comment, and I was like, I feel like DJ when he went wild on Reddit, I was like, this is wild.
What's the most famous you've been online?
This right now, I think.
That's funny.
Front page of Reddit.
Damn.
Once.
Nice.
That is nice.
That was wild. What was it again?
It was,
was-
something about incels, right?
Yeah, there was a subreddit called Incels, and they're basically like a women-hating group. Very small group, but notorious on Reddit. Anyway, Snapchat wrote an article about Reddit, and they're like, how Reddit is teaching men to hate women. And it's really just that one small group. Like, Reddit hates them.
Yeah. It's like saying, all of
Reddit.
this person is terrorist because
Yeah,
one person did something.
exactly. Yeah, so I took a
All white
screenshot.
kids are disrespectful.
Yeah, I took a screenshot of the article and just posted it on a sub called Mildly Infuriating. And then everyone was mildly infuriated.
I would say a little bit more than mildly.
No.
Aggressively.
How famous did you feel?
Like I could lick the sweat off of the servant of Kylie Jenner. I was that close.
All right, let's do question time.
Question. Jar. ASMR.
So we all put in So we all put in a ton of different questions into this jar, and if you have any good questions, DM us, let us know. But the question for the day,
What are you superstitious about?
Everything. Actually, okay, real life, I'm actually pretty effing superstitious. Before wrestling matches when I was growing up, I'd do the same stuff over and over again. Like I always would be the last person to touch. Like I would be the last person to put my foot on the line to get started. I'd always shake the ref's hand. Never did not do those things for like 8 years straight.
was it like a mental choice? Like I have to do this? Like what? Why?
My dad always just kind of taught me to shake the ref's hand, just kind of out of respect beginning, because you're kind of already on the ref's side. Like, hey, you're showing, you're acknowledging them, you're appreciating them. And before it started, I personally would always step to the line last, just so to see what foot they led with, because I lead with opposite foots. I'll switch my lead up, and not a lot of people do that, and so I would just kind of like see where they would.
So you
start.
had like motives behind them. They weren't just like, I gotta not do this or I will die.
But if I didn't do those things, like there's maybe once or twice I didn't shake the ref's hand, I'd be like kind of thrown off at the beginning. I'd be like, whoa, I always gotta check doors and stuff. That's not super superstitious though. Checking like the backseat of my car. Is that what you mean by superstitious?
It's whatever you want, bro.
I guess that's true.
No rules.
Well, y'all know that I'm like hella respectful to insects.
I told
Technology.
Yeah.
I told someone that. I was like, Jordan respects all bugs in technology. And they were like, wait, what?
Sean, what about you?
I have no superstitions.
I actually believe that. Okay. One thing that, I don't know if this counts, but whatever. When it might just be like something obsessive.
I was going to say half mine are like either OCD or like superstitions.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just going to throw it out. But when I'm walking on the sidewalk and my foot steps on a line,
You feel it.
I feel it. And my other foot has to step on like a line as well in the same spot. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like in the middle of your foot or the heel of your foot.
Yeah, like if my left foot steps on a line like the arch, then like I'll try to like pace myself so that like one of the lines I hit will be with my right foot at the arch. It's so
feel you.
weird, dude. But there's no reason. I don't know why. I just feel like I have to like balance. Like it's part of balancing my life.
I respect my mother's back, and so I don't step on the cracks. I actually will go like I'll try to get two steps in between cracks, like especially on campus at BYU. I'd be like very wary of the cracks.
One of my favorite little skits I've seen was on Robot Chicken. I remember watching it in high school, and it's like claymation. It's on Adult Swim, but yeah, it's like claymation and like literally 10 seconds. But this girl and her mother are like strolling down the sidewalk, and like she's skipping, hopping, and then she steps on a crack, and her mom bends over backwards, just back breaks. And the girl's like looking at the crack, looking at her mom. That was just like one of those things that we talked about in a previous episode. It's like step on a crack, break your mom's back. Like,
Where'd that start?
Yeah, where'd that start?
A witch.
Sorry, Mom, I always step on cracks.
So I don't really have any superstitions
In
anymore.
infidelity.
But when I was in high school, my freshman year, I only missed one single day of seminary all throughout high school because I was superstitious about this.
Seminary?
Because the one day I missed seminary was 9/11.
Oh my
And I was
gosh.
I caused that. And I was way too full of myself.
It was
But,
all me.
So what
It wasn't
happened
Bush.
when
It
you
wasn't Bush.
graduated seminary?
Kevin missing church school in the morning can
Yeah.
melt steel beams.
Oh yeah, seminary is like just church class before school. But yeah.
Well,
Mom's like, go to seminary, Kevin. He's like, no, Allahu Akbar.
You can lean on me.
I don't think I have any real suspicions. I think all of mine would be classified in OCD things.
like,
Just there are literally sometimes where I'll lock the door, get shower, brush my teeth, get in bed, turn on off the lights, and in my head I'll be like, "You have to go check the front door." Again. And I'm like, "You know you locked it, but I have to do it, or else I won't be able to sleep." Just things like that.
that's
I
superstitious.
don't know. I always line things up on desks. This is not really interesting. I just have a lot of OCD things.
Do you ever eat things with like color, like with regards to? Do you ever eat things in like categories of colors?
Hell no. What?
So for example, when I was little, eating Skittles or like M&Ms. First, if I had a lot of them, I'd line them up like they were playing football, and line them up in like football formations.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm really sports nerdy if y'all didn't know, but then I would like eat. Then I would separate them into teams, which was by their color.
Don't you have German ancestry?
I do.
That makes sense.
Yeah, the segregation. And then
You're like,
I'm like 60% German.
purples must go over there. The greens can live. That's like Bo Rat and shit.
And then and I'd eat them by color. So
shall take a shower.
and I couldn't eat like if I had 3 yellows and I had like 4 greens, I'd have to eat 1 green before the 3 yellows.
Here's some cultural superstitions. Like Hawaii is whistling at night. That's one of them. I think I've told you that before.
Like
But-
you hear whistling or you whistle?
Yeah, you're not supposed to whistle at night. It invites bad spirits. So, like one of the stories is my aunt and my uncles and like all their cousins. They went camping. This is when they were teenagers. I wasn't even born yet. But one of my uncles thought it'd be funny to start whistling. They're like all in this one tent, all the teenagers, and he starts whistling, and they're like, stop whistling, and he's just like laughing, whistling. They go to bed, and he wakes up at night just like really uncomfortable, and he like takes off his shirt, and there's just scratches all on the back of his back.
Like almost bleeding or what?
No, it wasn't bleeding. It didn't pierce skin, but
Like welts.
Dude,
it was like red. Like you could tell, like it was like a hard scratch. But that's a superstition. Another one in Tonga, because my dad's from there, is can't point at the graveyard. It's really disrespectful. So if you point at the graveyard, spirits will grab your fingers and gouge your eyes out. Yeah. Or you'll go to bed that night and wake up the next morning blind.
I remember watching a movie at my grandpa's when I was like 8 or 9, and they went into a cemetery, and this guy starts peeing on a tombstone,
Bro, that's not superstition. That's just
Generally frowned upon.
and then
That's
something
disrespect.
reaches out of the ground and grabs his wiener. And that's what that reminds me of.
Your Grandpa Wild, what are you watching?
Dude, my grandpa is a Freemason dude. He's like, sorry, R.I.P.
Philippines has some superstitions.
I was actually reading a bunch of them earlier today, funny
Yeah?
enough. Yeah.
Like what?
Did you ever hear the one like if you drop a fork in your house, you'll get a visitor? Like somebody.
It'll be gender. So if you drop
Yeah.
a spoon, it's a female. And if you drop a fork, a male is going to come.
Not bad or a spirit, just like
Finna drop all the spoons in our kitchen right now.
Sean just stands at the door. Yes, I'm here.
Sean has like a box of spoons from IKEA, just like dumping them on the ground.
I was reading stuff, a bunch of stuff about monsters in the Philippines, just because they talk about them so prevalently, just in passing, and so it's just kind of interesting. And I was trying to look up good stories from the Philippines because I've been asking people I know from there if they have any personal whatever experiences and stuff. And there's this. I'm not going to go into the story because I don't know it well enough, but apparently it's one of the most important or one of the most popular exorcisms in the Philippines, and it was super well known. It was on the front page of like 6 or 7 countries newspaper, like it was on the US, Egypt, a bunch of European countries as well. And apparently this girl, what it looked like, she got possessed, but she had like bite marks on her, like it looked like a vampire. And so in Philippine culture, they have what's called an aswang, and basically what it is the combination of like a vampire and like a ghost or a ghoul. And they look normal during the day, but at night is when they like prowl and attack, and they're basically vampires. But it was just like kind of weird that they have like that folklore, and then they have this very prevalent, like documented story of this girl who was like apparently possessed and stuff, and it was wild.
That is wild. So they thought it was an aswang.
Yeah, that's what they were trying to say. Oh, and she said there was like two entities that were like haunting her or trying to, possess her or whatever. One of them was bigger, which they say was the aswang, and then the other one was smaller, which they tried to say is like a kapri, which is like basically like a little like evil dwarf type kind of thing. And so it was like it was crazy, but
It's funny. I've heard the version of the kapri that I heard, and you hear like at least in the Philippines, when they tell you about these monsters and their superstitions, like you hear different versions of the monster, what they look like, what they do. So it could be a culmination of all of them, or they're all just liars. But the kapri that I heard is like this big man who's hairy, and he sits in trees.
I did hear the trees.
Yeah, and he smokes the cigar, and if you smell the smoke from his cigar, you're cured of like any illness that you might have.
So that's like you'd want to seek this dude out.
But this dude also steals children. So
It's a hairy man who steals kids.
sounds like an American.
It's like, yeah, that was just a GI.
ex-marine,
Bill.
yeah,
That was
trying to
Bill
pick
Smith.
up.
Dude, that's weird. One of my favorite books growing up, actually probably my favorite book, shout out all the moms. I asked my mom to find it and see if we had it still, and she did. And it's called Wiley and the Hairy Man. And it's an American folklore tale. and it's about the South in the swamp. People in the swamp know about the hairy man, and he hides in the swamp. And every once in a while, he'll come out, and he'll come to your house. He has a big bag, and he'll take your kids. And he can shapeshift.
Oh,
So he's like half fat, hairy man, and his legs are goat legs.
that's the goat man.
And then when everyone comes into the swamp and he finds them, he's like, "This is my swamp."
I knew you were gonna say that. I knew you were gonna say
Also,
that.
correction. The little monster I was trying to say was not a capri. You're right. Capri is the guy with the cigar and stuff. It's a duende, is what. Like
Oh,
the,
duende.
Yeah, the little ghoul.
Which is basically like
elf
almost like a dwarf.
Wasn't there another one called, was it Walk Walk?
Yeah, all the kids called me Walk Walk, and I'm not even joking. They'll just walk on the street, and sometimes they'd say
Walk Walk?
Walk Walk, which is just this. I've heard different versions. It's like half chicken, half lady, or big
That makes sense.
big monster. I'll take the latter.
What's the German folklore of the witch who has like the house with the chicken legs?
La Llorona.
That sounds very Spanish.
It's also a movie that premiered last week. What you got there though?
Okay, so my mom found the book, and I went to see her for Mother's Day, and she gave it back to me, and it's still just as good. But that's the hairy man, and this is what I would go to sleep to every single night. But he's magic, and he can shapeshift, and he comes into your home and takes you as a kid and puts you in a bag and takes you away from your parents. And so it's the whole story is about this mom. She has to hide her son from the hairy man like 8 times, and I think if you can trick him enough times, he can't come back.
He just gets lazy.
I think it's more he's like sealed by magic.
Oh, that's cooler. That's wild. How old were you trying to go to sleep after this? Because I'm 29 and I don't think I could go to sleep after looking at that.
But like
And-
that's him shapeshifting.
Did he go from a giraffe to an alligator?
I think yes.
If you see a giraffe in the swamp, though, you got other problems.
Like yeah. So creepy, the photos. So I'll put that on the Instagram just a little bit, but like look at that.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway.
Get in my
That's
boy.
wild.
Get in my bag,
Yeah.
Wiley.
One more superstition. Actually, 2 more from Hawaii. One is the famous Pali Highway, and I've talked about this in a previous episode, the Pali Cliff, where they had a war and they pushed the army over the cliff. You were not supposed to take pork in your car when driving over the highway.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so
Like eat regardless raw any type of pork.
yeah, any type of pork.
That's wild.
Yeah. That's one. 2, salt wards away evil spirits. So I remember my great grandmother, and we called her Tutu growing up. Tutu would get a Hawaiian salt and put them on the windowsill, every windowsill in the house. So growing up, there was just salt, like a line of salt at the windowsill to keep all the evil spirits away.
Dude, salt's in a lot of different
Yeah,
cultures. Because in Macumba, which is black magic from Brazil, they do a lot of shit with salt. And when I used to work in a Brazilian restaurant in California, before we opened every day, the hell of Brazilian grills chef, she'd take salt and she'd say prayers and throw it into the fire. Mm-hmm. And another Brazilian whispered to me, she's like, "That's Macumba." Or
That's wild.
black magic.
I wonder if it has anything to do with, salt was valuable back in the day.
There was wars fought over
Salt.
Yeah.
And they used
Yeah.
it to preserve food.
Before fridges,
Yeah, I wonder if there was a connection with preserving
preserving
life and keeping, your circle safe from any impurities. Another thing similar to salt in Hawaiian culture was the tea leaf. So we had tea leaf plants all over our house growing up, and that would keep evil spirits away too. So
Interesting, because both of those things are, and I feel like in every culture, salt is something that you use to ward away evil, and tea leaves are something that with gypsies and different witchcraft, voodoo type
healing,
stuff.
medicinal properties, things
and
like-
seeing beyond this realm or
So
whatever.
the crossover is crazy. Like in cultures.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when they would bless, whether it was a house or any type of site, part of the blessing in Hawaiian culture was a koa bowl. Koa is like really rare Hawaiian wood, and they'd have I don't know if it was salt water, but they'd have water in the koa bowl, and then they would dip the tea leaves in the bowl of water, and then like sprinkle the ground and say a prayer and whatnot. But
It'd be wild if there was like legitimate, like what if that like warded away like mosquitoes, but like no one really knew. They just
Which
thought it
like
was,
brought the
evil
plague,
spirits.
which could have been like
you know what I mean?
death.
Like if there was like a scientific or like logical explanation, like if there was like a legitimate benefit to doing that they just didn't realize that, and it was just passed down from like forever.
yeah,
It's like, why do you do that? And some uncle's like, evil spirit, and then it sticks.
like imagine if we like gave ancient, like in like the Dark Ages, like if we gave them off spray
Yeah,
and they just like treated this concoction as like
it's a potion.
God, yeah, it's a potion. It's God given. It's
When you were talking about the cemetery in Tonga,
yeah.
I lived with a Tongan dude for a while, and we were walking in Australia, and we passed this crazy old cemetery, and the headstones were like weathered. It was wild. It looked really cool. So I took out my camera, and I was gonna go take a photo, and I just felt this huge hand on my shoulder, and I like turned around. And he's just standing there, all solemn face, and he's like, "Back in Tonga, we do not do that." And he just shook his head, and I was like, okay, I won't do that.
Just listen and like you respect it.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
But I was like, that's true. Like, and my intention, I wasn't trying to like defile anything, but there's something to be said about
Respecting other people's.
reverence
Yeah.
towards other people's stuff. So
I think it's funny though, because personally for me, I don't feel like photos are something that is irreverent. But
there's
I
another
think-
superstition though, like Native American, a certain tribe believe when your photo's taken, a part of your soul is taken.
That's so interesting, and that's crazy too, because that's so recent. Like we've only had photography in the last 150 years.
Dude, imagine if that's
It's been longer
true.
than that, actually.
It would explain a lot of Instagram influencers. You know what I'm saying?
Dude, they have no soul,
All these soulless selfie bitches. You know what I mean?
and they're not even redheads. But
Sean has the most followers on Instagram. Oh fuck. Ginger, I'm just saying.
Dude, you know what time it is?
is it 3 a.m.?
No, it's time to roll.
Hey, wait.
Second segment of our show, when we roll our 20-sided die, highest number goes first in telling their story. Everybody up?
Yes, sir. I don't have a die right now, though, so
I don't
can I
either. I'm
use
just gonna
someone
use yours
else's?
too.
Oh, so you're not about this.
Okay, I'll go find mine then.
Sorry, mine's already packed.
Okay, it's highest
All right,
goes last.
first.
First.
Oh, that's right. Okay,
It's a privilege, boy.
that's right. 3, 2, 1. That is a heavy one.
So Kevin just got 16. Jordan got
10.
15.
that was DJ, and Sean got
Lucky number 13.
ooh, and I got 9. So Kevin first.
Almost the order that we're sitting in. But yeah, Kevin, go ahead. Do you guys want to switch seats?
Yeah.
Hello.
What's good?
Everything.
Tell us what you got. What story you got?
Well, this time I was gonna tell an experience that I had when I was living in Austin. I was doing summer sales. I know everybody hates those guys.
Douchebag.
So for those who don't know, summer sales is a huge thing in Utah. It's like everyone leaves in the summer and goes and sells just a product. So it's like solar or
I was doing pest
bug
control.
spray. Yeah, pest control.
Alarm systems, yeah.
Yeah. So I was one of those guys that did it multiple years. I did 2 years of alarms and then 1 of pest control. But when I was doing pest control, I was living in Austin, which is the only redeemable part of Texas. Sorry, Texas.
We're just going to lose all of our Texas followers now. Thanks, Kev. That's good.
I'm from El Paso. Nobody in Texas claims me anyway. So
And yeah, being from El Paso, you're probably from the lowest of the low. So you have claim to insulting
From the
everyone else.
shithole is what he said.
but anyway, so Austin's really cool. It's beautiful. I really like it there. They're very park friendly there.
Park friendly?
Yeah, there's just a lot of parks everywhere.
Oh, okay.
Which is cool. Like, for real, in the middle of like downtown Austin, there's this giant park, almost like Central Park for New York City, but it's in the middle of downtown Austin, and it follows this river, and you can't even tell you're in a city because you literally feel like you're like out in the woods. It's pretty cool. So I was living with 5 people in my apartment, and it was a 2-bedroom apartment, and so the master bedroom had 3 guys in it, and I was in there with 2 other guys. One of my roommates went on a date that night, and we were really good friends. I was trying to wait up for him because he was super excited to go on this date, and I wanted to talk to him afterwards. But I was getting tired, and I had an early day the next day, so I went to bed. And I woke up probably about an hour later to feeling like somebody was sitting on my bed. I kind of like roll over a bit. Like my back was facing, I was facing the wall, and my back was facing the rest of the room. And so when he sat on my bed, I leaned a little bit, and I went to like pat him on the back and like be like, hey, how's your date? But my arm just like went through. So I thought he was messing with me and like leaned forward. And I was like, whatever, I'm too tired. I'm not dealing with this. And then he got up. So then I rolled back up, and I was like, oh, okay, like he's going off to bed. But then he sat on my bed again, closer to me. And so I rolled even more. I went to pat him on the back again, and my arm just went through. And so I was like, what is he doing? So I turn over to look, and there's nobody there. And as I turn over, I get pulled off of my bed, and I'm on the floor, and I'm sprawled out, and I can't really move. And my bed is in the corner. It's up against 2 walls. So I roll off. I'm sprawled there. I can't move. And then all of a sudden I start getting pulled under my bed. And so I push one of my feet up against the wall, and I'm pushing against it. All of a sudden I can see in my room, just it's full of all of these like black figures. And there's a couple on me holding me down still that I can't move. From underneath my bed, it was just like pitch black. And that was where I was like pulling, and I had one of my legs under there, and there's like a bunch of pressure on it, and I was pushing against the wall, and I was trying to like army crawl out, but I couldn't move very well. One of my roommates was just on a mattress, and he was at the foot of my bed, and all I knew was like, if I could wake him up, then I'll be good. And so I'm trying to make my way out, and I get my arm extended, and I'm like inches away from his bed, and I'm trying with like all of my might to get his attention, and I can't make any noise. For whatever reason, I don't know if it was like fear or what, I'm not able to make any noise. And I finally army crawl enough, and each time I make any amount of like progress, another one of the like dark figures jumps on top of me and is like trying to hold me down, make it to where I can't move my arms and stuff. And in my head this whole time, I'm just thinking, like, first off, I'm praying, and then secondly, I'm trying to like get my friend's attention. I finally get to where one fingertip touches the bed, and I lift my hand up and I smack down. And luckily this fool is a light sleeper because it woke him up, and he turns around and looks at me and jumps back because I'm just sprawled out on the ground with like one of my legs under my bed, and he's like, are you okay? And as soon as he did that, everything left. Ooh. And I was all, I think so. And then my roommate got back from his date, and it was a really good date, and they like started dating for a long time. But yeah, that was insane. That was one of the most physical experiences I've had, where like something's trying to, and I always think, because it's so surreal, I'm like, did I dream it? Like, was it like some weird state of like sleepwalking? But I don't know.
Or maybe like astral planing.
No,
well, except it was my physical body moved, on the ground.
Like he didn't leave his body because his body was there. At the very least, that's the most intense like sleep paralysis you could ever, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Where you're seeing multiple figures and they're jumping on you.
Except I was moving, so it's not really paralysis. I don't know. I have no idea. The room was full of people, and it wasn't the first time. Like I told last time I was on the podcast, I'd wake up all the time and like see people in my room, or like hear people walking around my room. This time though, I'd never seen that. Well, actually, one other time I'd seen probably that many in my room, but it was just like jam-packed full. And the only light in my room was coming from my open door, and the living room light was on. But so I couldn't see details, but it was just a bunch of like silhouettes of these black beings in my room, and then just like jumping on me, and just like the feeling was just like such malice. And I don't understand like why under my bed. That sounds so dumb and cliche. Like, I don't know, the kid scared of like the monster under the bed, or like getting pulled under the bed, you know?
Maybe there's something to it.
I don't know. It was just terrifying.
You know, like growing up, I know that you don't have this problem, Kevin, but most people do. When you're sleeping, most people hate when their feet are hanging out of like the sheet or blanket. And now you just gave like everyone a reason to really have that fear.
Why don't I have that problem?
You and the rats of Tonga.
Cover your feet.
If you remember, my first movies I ever remember watching was It and Puppet Master. Well, I also watched Pet Sematary at a very young age, and the original one, not this lame new one. And the grandpa puts his feet over the bed, getting out of the bed, and his Achilles tendon gets slit by the kid underneath it. So I'm like, I never like get right out of bed. I always like step away from the bed, or like run and jump into the bed.
Legit, I think in Las Vegas, a kid got arrested for, actually, I think a group of people were hiding under cars and cutting ankles.
Okay, they were doing that in Houston as well, in East Texas with the hurricanes. They would hide under people's cars, cut their Achilles tendons, and then carjack them.
Dude, take my effing car. Don't cut my Achilles tendon. Have my car. Okay, if you ever are under my car and you have a blade and you said, I would have cut your Achilles tendon, I will freely just give you my keys. You won.
Keys and my $12.50 Venmo credit that I have. I'm like, that's everything. That's everything. I promise.
Whenever I'm getting out of a car at night or out of my bed, sometimes I take a little bit longer of a leap to keep my Achilles safe.
Yeah.
Walking up to my car, I just do jumping jacks while I'm unlocking it. I'm like, trying to get this key in the
High
door.
knees.
I'm like,
That story, I just recently stopped sleeping with a light on, so I'm going to have to turn that back on tonight. So
Well, I mean, we had a light, so it doesn't really do anything. Sorry.
now I'm just not going to sleep. Cool.
That would, if that happened to me, that would probably be the scariest thing in the world. Getting drug out of your bed and pulled somewhere and not being able to fight it. Hell no.
Yeah.
That's my thing with like, that's almost why I would rather have like a serial killer rather than a ghost, because you're not playing on the same rules. It's like a spirit, you know, if they pick you up, it's like, okay, how do you fight anti-gravity? You know what I mean? Or how do you fight demons possessing you? So I don't know.
that reminds me of, I talked about night marchers in a previous episode. So they usually travel on a specific path, and there's like a pattern to it. And some of these paths have homes on it.
Ugh.
And they've been known to go through the homes, and the sleeping children, they don't hurt them, fortunately, but they carry the children with them.
Hell no.
So there's been accounts of, you know, missing children, and then they come back in the morning because they woke up in like the forest. They walk back home.
Dude, that would suck if you built your damn home and you find out it's on this spirit highway and you're like, good gravy. You know what I mean?
Pee yourself every 3 nights, you know?
Why pee yourself?
Oh, so night marchers, just a quick recap. They are the spirits of royalty in old Hawaii. So like the kings and queens.
Gotcha.
And
I remember.
yeah, when they would travel throughout the island, they would march. And you were supposed to, if you come in contact with them, to show that they're higher than you and you're lower than them, strip yourself naked, pee yourself, bow down on the ground, don't look them in the eye, and then they let you
Pee
go.
on them.
You'd be dead.
No wonder you're getting pulled off your bed at night.
I had a couple friends who were practicing lucid dreaming or trying to learn how to lucid dream.
Lucid's the one where you can like control your dream, right?
Yeah.
I
And
would like to learn that
you're,
too.
like,
Shout out
conscious.
to anyone who knows. Thank you.
Yeah, like you're conscious of what's going on, and you know, what they would do is they weren't living in the same city, so they they would try to like meet up in their dreams and like hang out in their dreams. Yeah, so they would try to meet up with each other in the dreams and hang out. It got to the point where slowly, as they started learning how to control their dreams more and more, they started off with keeping a dream journal, which you might have heard of. You know, you wake up and write down immediately, you know, every single possible detail that you can remember. But they would just write that down, and that's one of the processes of learning how to lucid dream. But it got to the point where slowly there was an unfamiliar character in their dream. And it was this dark, like imp-like figure. One night it just appeared, but off in the distance, not really doing anything, not interacting with them.
In their dream?
Yeah, in their dream. It's just kind of like tail behind them, but at a distance. And then every night, distance closed. And this little imp-like creature would get closer and closer. And it got to the point where it was right in front of them. And they described this face that it looked like a demon. That's all they described it as. And then in the dream, it started to attack them. Instead of meeting up with each other or doing whatever they wanted to do, they would spend the rest of their dream fighting this demon. And this happened every night, and the fights got crazier and crazier. They would, the way he described it to me was, it sounded like Avatar, The Last Airbender. Like they would like build walls and cages and try to like keep this demon tamed and away, but it would just like, they build like a cage and it would just like apparate right through the cage, or they'd like shoot fire at it and it wouldn't affect it or anything. But yeah, it was like terrorizing them, and they would wake up just exhausted the next day, and it wasn't good for them. But yeah, I think dream state is like, we don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's connected to like some spiritual plane at some point.
I think it's Native Americans who believe dream world is the real world, and this is dreaming. And in Australia, the Aboriginals, when they talk about heaven or anything spiritual, it's dreamland or dreamtime. Dreamtime. I need to look that up. But yeah, it's big. If you're interested in lucid dreaming, right before my mission, I bought manuals on how to do it. I was super into astral planing and lucid dreaming, and I didn't think about the negative repercussions at all. And they're very, very, very similar.
What are the negative repercussions?
To which one?
Lucid dreaming.
My only thought in lucid dreaming with like having negative repercussions is it's so much like astral planing that, you know, like you might end up leaving your body. It's like the same process. Like there's tricks. So if you're interested in lucid dreaming, what you can do, there's tricks, is before you go to sleep or as you're falling asleep, you imagine yourself walking up or downstairs, step by step. And you just imagine that. And eventually, that's the easiest way. It's the least effective, and that takes a long time, like hours. But the idea is if you're able to get to the point where you can do it right, your body will shut down, and they call it a shuddering. So you like shudder, and your body shuts down, but your mind's still awake, and you're walking down these stairs, and then you're in dreamland, and then you can do whatever you want. There's other tricks like in the real world, every time you walk into a room, feel for the light switch. And if you do that enough, you become enough of a habit. One time in your dream, you might do it. You won't feel it, and it will trigger like anything to pull you out or make you realize it's a dream. All of a sudden, you'll have control. And then like there's a lot of breathing techniques and things like that. But astral planing is super similar. Is like if you can clear your mind and get into a state where you're like just focusing on something, you get to that point where you can leave.
Well, I used to lucid dream all the time. I can still do it. I can still lucid dream every once in a while now, but when I was younger, I used to do it all the time. And I remember telling my oldest sister that all the time. I was like, oh yeah, I knew I was dreaming, so I decided I wanted to fly and like, you know, stuff like that. And she's all, oh, that's cool. And like, but nobody ever told me there was a name for it until I was talking to you that time. And you're like, oh yeah, lucid dreaming. And when we first met and you asked me what's the scariest thing, we got off onto dreams and all that. But I feel like I've only astroplaned once when I was meditating with my oldest sister, and I felt like myself float up, and I was looking down at myself, and then it freaked me out, and then I like hit the ground with my hands in my body to make sure I was like still on the ground, and then I like snapped out of it, and it was crazy. But I told my oldest sister, and she's all like, oh, "You did it!" And I was all, "I don't want to.
I don't want to do that again."
That was scary. Yeah, it freaked the crap out of me, and so I've never done it since.
That's wild. It makes sense that there's like negative ramifications with it all, because like when we recently just watched The Matrix, and so when I think about a dream, if you're regularly dreaming, you're just dreaming, right? Like you're not disrupting anything, you're not showing anything that you know what's going on. But when you're lucid dreaming, it's like, hey, like I'm in control now, and now it's like I think other things can sense that, and maybe they're drawn to that, you know.
Just like Inception, like the subconscious.
Where they all just start slowly looking at you.
Yeah.
Like the universe or the system takes note to like you being different, and yeah, you could become a target.
Going against the grain.
So be like everyone else is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Don't stand out.
Conform to society.
Above the crowd.
Let the man show you the way.
But straight up, if you are interested in that, my word of advice is just be careful, because I've had things happen, and I've seen things, and I've talked to enough people where like I feel like if you don't respect things like that, bad things can happen.
I have 2 stories. First story takes place. Both of them are on Oahu, but this first one is on the southern part of Oahu, at an old drive-in theater. This is a famous story. It was in the papers, and
So it's real,
it's real
documented.
because the media told us.
Did you say when this happened? Sorry.
This is like, I want to say in like the 70s, 80s.
The 70s are creepy to me anyways.
And it's drive-in, like the drive-in theater doesn't exist anymore. They closed down when I was a kid. So yeah, this was definitely 70s, 80s. I'd have to double check though. Anyway, in the women's bathroom, a woman walks in, and when she walks in, she sees this lady at the sink, and she's just like fixing her hair, combing her hair, whatever. She uses the bathroom. She finishes, and she's waiting to use the sink. There's only one. And the woman's still there, and she's combing her hair. Really long, red hair. And she's like, why is this woman taking so long? Like, I already used the bathroom, and she's still here. She knows I'm waiting. And
Yeah, red flags.
so this woman, she like taps her on the shoulder, and she's like, excuse me.
Oh gosh.
And the woman's still combing her hair and doesn't really pay attention. And lady's like, that's weird. So she like taps her, and she's like, excuse me, can I wash my hands? And still, she just combs her hair.
Ugh.
So she kind of like goes to her side. She can't really see her because the woman, like, it's creepy because she's really close to the mirror. And she can't, like, she only sees like the back of her head. So she like moves to the side, and she looks at the woman, and the woman, I guess, notices her, like right next to her side. She stops combing her hair. She turns her head and she looks, and the woman has no eyes, no nose, no mouth. This is known as the faceless lady of Waialae Drive-In.
What do you mean? No eyes, no nose, no like there's gaping holes?
Nothing.
Like it's a skull with a hole in it?
No,
Or
it's
like
just
flat, like Slenderman.
It's like
It's just
almost
skin?
Like, yeah, just skin.
Oh no.
Yeah, and
Bro, why is she using the mirror then?
I don't know. Go to the drive-in and ask her yourself, dude.
So she's known as what?
The faceless woman of Waialae Drive-In. So the town it was in is there's a big street called the Waialae Avenue. The drive-in was right off of that street. There were like multiple accounts of people seeing this woman in this bathroom, and it was a famous story back in the day.
Like it got in the paper.
Yeah.
Did anything like ever happen, or they would just see her?
They would just see her. There was another account was a woman got into the bathroom and she sees this girl inside the bathroom just standing there with her back turned towards her. And as she was walking into, like, deeper into the bathroom, like, the girl started turning, not towards her, but keeping her back towards her. And she's like, this is weird, this is creepy. And she's just, like, fixing herself or makeup, whatever, in the mirror. And she notices when she's looking in the mirror, she can see the girl behind her, and it's just like the top half of her body. And then she freezes, and in this account, the girl turns around, the top half of her body turns around, and she notices she has no face, like zero features, just skin. But
So, is there any folklore behind, like, maybe who that is or why that is?
I've tried looking into it. I've read books that have these accounts. I remember my mom and my aunt
Talking about it.
talking to me about it, and when they were in high school, they were like, "Yeah, everybody knew about that."
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah,
It makes me think of like if folklore, at least in some parts of the States. I know like you have Bloody Mary, right? Where you like say Bloody Mary like 5 times in a row.
Have you guys
in the
ever done that?
bathroom.
Yes.
I have not, because I do not want to get haunted.
Dude, we used to do that in my elementary school in the bathroom. You could shut the door and it was completely black. And I
did the same thing.
They do it at my elementary school in Stockton.
like Kevin, I had hella Mexicans in my, and them mofos is suspicious. You know what I mean? Super suspicious.
Yeah, I ain't trying to mess with that.
But they were like, hey, like, let's go do the Bloody Maria. No. But they were like, let's go do Bloody Mary. And I was like, down. And so we do that shit. And I never saw anything, but it's just so creepy. Staring at yourself in a dark mirror and saying something, thinking something's going to come is unsettling.
but like even as an adult, but then as a child, it's just like magnified tenfold.
It's almost scarier for me as an adult, because it's like, as a kid, you're like, oh, adults can protect me. But as an adult, you're like, oh, no one can protect me.
It's just me.
When you were telling that story, it made me think about my elementary school, John Muir in Stockton, because that's when I first learned about Bloody Mary. And so like I went immediately to the specific bathroom. Like I remember kids telling me about it. And so it's like funny that you guys are also, oh, it's so wild.
I remember walking into the bathroom. I was like in 1st or 2nd grade, and there were kids hiding in the bathroom, like behind the door. And so I walk in, and then they shut the door, and then they turn off the light, and they're like, do Bloody Mary. And
They bait you?
yeah.
It's like a prison.
I remember walking to the front of the mirror.
Were they
and just-
Mexican? I'm just kidding.
He's in
all little Hawaiian
They're
kids.
Filipino, so
all the
yes.
all the same, honestly.
Just kidding. Sorry.
JK, shout out Filipinos, I love you.
Yeah, all 2nd class. Don't matter.
Gosh. Oh gosh.
Just kidding. One world, one love.
I remember standing in front of the mirror, and then I turned around to not do it, and I was like, no. And then they were like, oh, okay. And then they opened the door.
I wish
Turn the light on.
I wish I could go back to those experiences as a kid and just like know what it was and then troll them back and just be like,
Just like fall on the ground, like start shaking.
I will murder all over.
me amo Bloody Mary.
Ako si Bloody Mary. Yeah, so that was the faceless woman. Second story. What?
No, I loved that segue. Wasn't expecting. I was expecting someone else.
Second story. Last year, for you listeners out there, a bunch of people in our friend group came and visited Hawaii with me, stayed at my house, beach, hike, eat every day.
Literally lived life for the first time in my life.
It was great.
Y'all, if you haven't been to Hawaii, y'all don't know what the hell you missing out, boy. They're doing life right over there.
Do you remember the night before we went on our shark diving tour? We went to the mall, to that surf shop,
Oh yeah.
to get rash guards. Anyway, that mall, it's about 5 minutes from my house. It's known as Windward Mall. And that mall is known to be haunted. And there's an actual graveyard on the mall grounds.
What?
And before the mall was built, it was all a graveyard.
Oh, okay.
So they
Still,
built
though.
the mall over the graveyard. I think they took out as many bodies as they could.
Have Hawaiians never seen a scary movie?
Also, why did you not tell us this when we were there?
Honestly, I remember the story that I'm about to tell. Like, I haven't thought about this story since I was like a teenager. Like, it's been so long.
Oh, that's exciting.
I don't know what about it like made me think of
Jogged
it again.
memory.
Recovered memories?
Yeah.
Those are the
So,
best.
like, I
The
got-
souls that are not resting underneath that mall right now.
yeah, like right before we started recording, I walked into the door and it like clicked in my mind.
Like you
And
just remembered
and I
this.
was like, oh damn! I was like, it's perfect. Like it's meant to be. So, yeah, the mall is built over the graveyard, and from what I know, they tried to, relocate as much of the bodies as they could.
That's what they tell us.
That's what they
don't
tell
be
us.
shite.
But
You've done construction in Hawaii. How responsible are they? Like, oh, it's so late. You get all the bodies. I got free.
that's good. Yeah.
I got like free teen. That's 13.
I had an uncle who worked at a security guard and did night shifts at the mall. He has 2 accounts of seeing someone who shouldn't have been there. So there's 2, not more than 3 security guards just walking around the mall at night. He's one of them. They have their walkie-talkies. They know where they're all at. And the first time this happens to him, he sees somebody standing like at the end of a walkway on the 2nd floor. He's like, excuse me, like the mall's closed. You're not supposed to be here. The guy doesn't move. He's just standing there. So he starts walking up to him. He's about 50 feet away or so. As he gets closer, the man all of a sudden just walks off around the corner. So he picks up his pace. He's like, excuse me. And he turns a corner and the man's not there anymore. So my uncle gets on his walkie-talkie and he's like checking in with all the other security guards. He's like, yo, I know you're right here. And they ping back. They're like, what are you talking about?
He's all funny joke, Polynesian blart, mall cop.
He's like, what are you talking? He's like, his buddies reply like, what are you talking about? And they show that they're like on the 1st floor, like across from where he's at. And they come out to like the middle clearing of the mall. And he's like,
Well, damn.
so
Turning them 2 weeks.
nothing else happened for a while. And I think it was a few weeks, maybe a month later, where he sees the same person in a different part of the mall, close to, we had a Sears at the mall, RIP. And there were 3, the mall was kind of like a triangle, and on each corner of the mall, there was like a big outlet store. Like one end was Macy's, one was JCPenney's, one was Sears. So this was like in the 90s. I was like a kid when he told me this story. So they're like close to the Sears end, and he sees this person standing there again, and he's like, oh shoot. And he's like, this time, he's like, excuse me, sir. Before he approaches him, he calls one of his friends.
Yeah, back up.
And his friend comes over, and he's just standing there watching this guy. This guy's not facing them. He's like facing away. So they just see his back. The friend comes, and they start approaching the man together. The man starts walking slowly away from them. As they get closer, he starts picking up his pace. He just starts running. They're chasing him at this point. And these big stores, Sears, and you've probably seen them in malls, when they close down, they have like the big glass sliding doors. Yeah, the man is running towards Sears.
Like full clip
Yeah, full
towards this glass wall.
yeah, towards this glass wall. And
Like the homie from Get Out.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The caretaker. But they're running towards this man, and they watch as this man just goes right through the glass and into Sears.
Like breaks through or just like goes through it?
Just goes through it.
Dude.
Like apparates.
How fast are you just screeching to a terrified halt?
And they
I'm quick. I'd be stopped immediately.
yeah, they stop and they turn around and just let it go. They don't do anything after that. But
Oh no.
Backpedal away.
yeah, imagine chasing someone and they run through something and disappear.
Like Will Smith when he's like chasing the alien in the beginning, the dude like jumps up and he's like, how the hell did he get him?
Or Will Smith when he's driving and then he sees the mannequin on the other side of the road. What are you doing here, Frank? Yeah, he's like, Frank, what the hell are you doing here?
We bring up Men in Black almost every episode.
Do we really? That's
Yes.
hilarious.
Really? Yes. That one was I'm Legend.
Well,
Oh yeah,
what
yeah.
I
But
was
like
talking about
the
was
one
Men
he
in
was
Black.
talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
And then earlier we're like, sugar water. And then cockroaches. We talk about cockroaches. Dude, it's either a Hawaiian spirit or like Chris Angel. Just teleporting through windows.
Mind freak.
Yeah.
Sears 95.
Just
Dude's
practicing
like, they gotta buy one, get one, sell in Sears.
on your uncle.
I can get 2 dishwashers for the price of one.
Did he tell you that story
Yeah.
when you were a kid?
Yeah.
That's unsettling. Just simple things like that are sometimes the scariest to me. When it's over the top, I'm like, man. But just like, okay. I came tonight with one of my favorite scary stories ever. And I'm going to share it next time.
Oh, what?
That's hilarious. I
But
like
this
that.
time, when you told your story about the faceless woman, jogged a memory. So I just had the displeasure of visiting Visalia for Mother's Day. And that's where my mom still is. So I went there and I hung out with my mom all weekend. We love you, moms. Shout out over there.
Happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Yeah. But while I was home, I was just like, people were like, hey, I saw you started a podcast. And I was like, yeah, like, give it a listen if you want, whatever. But then the discussion of scary stories came up. And I was with some people who I was friends with in high school. And we were talking. And one of them's like, do you remember that scary story that happened to Dana's brother? And I was like, which one? And then she told me this story. And it's
You forgot about it, huh?
completely forgot about it. But as you're talking about the faceless woman of wherever, Lake Titicaca, Lake Wahine or something, I was like, dang it, okay. It starts out super late at night, probably past 2 a.m. Him and a buddy decide to go eat, and where all homeless vagrants go eat at night is Denny's. A lot of us end up there. Actually, I have another story about that Denny's. Same Denny's.
Is it the one off Acres?
Yes,
dude.
boy.
That one always. There's so many stories about that Denny's.
Dude,
from
I've
Visalia.
seen wild shit happen there. But yeah, so he went to that Denny's. You know that one. On Acres and like Noble. And there, it's like it's honestly could be like past 3, almost 4 o'clock. They go and they sit down. There's probably like one other person in the restaurant. And they start to eat. And all of a sudden, so they're sitting in a booth facing each other. And my friend's brother sat with his back facing the door. And the
First
guy,
mistake.
eventually the guy eating, the one other person in the restaurant gets up and leaves. So it's just them and the staff. And the waitresses are like over by the register hanging out. And then they hear the door open. And a guy walks up and passes my friend's back so he can't see him. But he's looking at his buddy who's facing the door. And his buddy just like glances up to look at who's passing. And all of a sudden his eyes shoot back to my friend. And his face is white. And his eyes are wide. And the guy walks past them and sits in the booth directly behind my friend's older brother's friend.
Weird flex.
So like directly behind him. And my friend's brother, I'm going to call him Kyle. He whispers, what, like, you good? Because his friend's face drained of blood. And his friend just quietly shaking his head. Not saying anything. And so he's sitting there and he's all perked. Immediately the chemistry in all of Denny's is like different. Something's wrong. And he's looking around and he looks over near the register. All the nurses. He looks near the register. All the servers are gone. All the waitresses went to the back. where he could like hear the chefs before and stuff in the back, they're all silent. And he's like, what is happening? Finally, after like 2 minutes, the guy's sitting there in the back. A waitress walks out, walks down the aisle, sets down a pot and a cup of coffee, and walks way back in there. And so he's like, dude, what's going on? He asks his friend, and his friend's like, no. Then the guy gets up. The guy behind him, they can just hear sipping their coffee. And his friend just like won't talk at all. He's terrified. So what he does is Kyle leans over and he's trying to look around his friend's head to see like what the hell's up with this guy. And he sees like long, greasy, matted black hair. And it's like it's covering a lot of his face, like it's shrouding his face. Like you could think of like Snape for like a visual reference. So eventually the guy like finishes his coffee and he stands up to go to the bathroom. And Kyle's like, all right, dude, let's find out what the F is going on. So he's like, I'm just going to look real quick, looks up at him. And the dude's face, he said, was the scariest thing he's ever seen. At first, he thought the dude was wearing a mask. He said he couldn't see eyeballs. It was dark holes where his eyes was. And his face looked like it was barely hanging on to like the bone. It was just drooping. Like he was like, I thought it was a Halloween mask. And the guy passed me. So the guy stood up, walked past him, and the guy goes to the bathroom to use the bathroom.
At this point, have both of them have seen him now? His
Yeah.
face?
Yeah. So the guy walks past Kyle. Kyle sees his face. And the guy goes to the bathroom. And Kyle's like, what the hell was that? And leans into his friend. He's like, what the hell was that? And his friend's like, I don't know, dude. I think he's wearing a mask. That's the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. And while the guy's in the bathroom, the waitress comes and drops their check and says like, I'm so sorry, guys, about that. Like, this guy only comes in once a month. And he gives all of us a bad vibe. None of us want to serve him. All he wants is coffee, sometimes eggs and like food. But we just leave him alone. And so like, so that wasn't a mask? And they're like, no, that's his face. So then Kyle and his friend pay the bill. They're like, dude, let's get the F out of here. So they go and they get in their car. And as they're driving away, they look over into the window. The guy has come back and sat in his booth and he's staring out the window. And so they pull away in the parking lot. And as they're pulling away, the guy just staring at them the whole time they go by and just follows them out. And that's when Kyle is like, dude, F this dude. Like he's mean mugging us. And so they came back at the same time, like 4 times a week for like 2 months to see this guy again. Never saw him again. And they talked to like the waitresses and they never saw him again.
Gosh, that's so creepy.
That reminds me a little bit of Black-Eyed Children. It's like they don't have eyes. It's just like holes where their eyes should be. And they follow people. Or they just kind of exist.
I feel like they connect to people who like give them like power, if that makes sense. Like that like gives them notice. Like if they keep seeing them and it keeps affecting them, at least the things that like the stories of them that I've heard, it's like they'll move somewhere and then they'll still see the kid
Like
or
the
like the
connections
black
grow
guys.
stronger with
Yeah.
them.
And I heard going along with that they won't harm you or bother you more if you just leave them alone. But the second you acknowledge their presence, if you speak, say something to them, like who are you, or even get away, then that gives them permission to start interacting. They've been known to harm people after that. But
There's a ton of like folklore and urban legends where it's like, if you react, that's like almost the permission that they need. Or there's like a lot of things, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like the fly's grave I told last week. It's like, no matter what you hear, what you see, you cannot react. And you have to just keep walking forward.
like I feel like depending on what or who it is, if your reaction is one of fear, I think that's the one that gives them permission. If you're doing something out of the ordinary, like my I was talking about my tutu earlier, my great grandmother. Her husband, everybody called him Papa Sixto, old Filipino man.
Sixto?
Yeah, Sixto was his name. Papa Sixto passed away when I was like 2, so I don't remember him at all. But my grandma and my mom and my aunt would tell me stories about him growing up. And one of the most common stories was they would be eating dinner, and then he would just continue the conversation with somebody who wasn't there. Not freak out, just be normal. Like he'd be like, "What about you? How's your day?" Call them by name. And then he'd go to the kitchen, make a plate, put it at a chair that was empty, just talk to them.
So he could see?
I don't know if he could see them, but he definitely recognized their presence. And he would like just treat everything normal. Like he wasn't afraid of them. But yeah, treat it like it was just normal.
I wonder if they just like feed off of fear. And maybe it's not necessarily a permission thing. It's like a, ooh, this is a good opportunity thing.
Maybe it's not like just fear, but any strong emotion. And I think fear is generally pretty strong. So maybe that one's just like the McDonald's of energy. You know what I'm saying? Where it's just like a lot and fast.
That makes sense.
But like I could see them feeding off of anger or, I don't know, all different types.
Because my whole philosophy, if I ever experience, like I had somebody try to scare me really bad one time, like 10 years ago actually. But my whole reaction during it, because the person next to me thought it was real, and I was just like, I'm just going to keep pretending like I'm asleep. Like I'm not going to acknowledge it. I'm just going to keep going. You know what I mean? Like that's like my default. Like don't, whatever.
It just takes away all power.
Because if you like show it, then it's like, if you keep recognizing it or going back to it, that gives it power. I imagine, you know what I mean? You're honestly like almost egging it on by like giving it too much attention.
I feel you.
That's interesting because I was like, my story would have been better like 3 episodes ago until we started talking about this. And so this kind of connects my story. It's about an inanimate object. It's like an inanimate object, but I think kind of what we've been talking about where we're giving it power by acknowledging it, right? And just like almost giving it permission. But it's about 2 brothers in the Philippines. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Philippines, like 95% of the population is very like Catholic. And so you see a lot of, and anyone who's in any type of Catholic culture, they have a lot of statues, a lot of paintings that are very expressive, very intense about like the crucifixion, right? And honestly, some of the scariest things I've ever seen are like in a Catholic church. So if we're going to be honest, but yeah, so these 2 brothers that lived in the Philippines, northern part of the Philippines, just south of Manila. Their grandmother gave them a Santa Nino, little statue for Christmas.
What's that?
It's like baby Jesus.
Okay.
And Santa Nino is very important to
Little saint.
Yeah. It's very important, especially to the Philippines. Like they have a huge festival called Sinulog. It's like kind of like the all-encompassing saint, which makes sense because it's baby Jesus. But I think different cultures have different saints that kind of drive them a bit more, you know. But yeah, so Santa Nino, it's ward off spirits. You know, it's just very super. You want to be safe or whatever it is. And so the kid says he was like 8 or 9, and his brother was just like low teens. So the brother, the older brother is going out of town for like a week. And so he leaves for a week. And the younger brother, this is like his first time ever that he like gets his room alone. He gets, he's like, how, like especially being little and
I'm the man now.
Yeah,
I'm the big brother.
Having your own room and, especially having like that freedom at night to like, oh, I can do whatever I want for a couple hours. I have my brother here or whatever. That sounded shady, but I meant like watch whatever I want to watch.
Get your uten out,
So the brother leaves for a week. He said that he kept his room very tidy. And so pretty clean room or whatever. He goes, we just didn't dust the desk a lot. And so he's like, I think dusting was kind of the way he was explaining dusting. I was like, oh yeah, I agree. Dusting's pointless. And so Santa Nino's sitting there on their dresser, just like right in the middle of their 2 beds. And he says the first night his brother is gone, he wakes up in the middle of the night and says that he looks over at the Santa Nino statue It's like, 2 feet high, and it's facing him. And so he's like, he kind of is like, that's weird, it's just but it was like, it moved enough to where it caught his attention. And so he noticed it.
Like that's not the same.
Yeah. He's like, why is that facing me? Like, they never touched it. They didn't, he goes, they weren't that devout either. So he never really prayed to it either or whatever. So he was kind of, thrown off by it, but not that alarmed. Woke up the next morning, Santo Nino's in the same spot that it was for him, like that they had put it there originally. So it was facing straight, not his bed now. And so he's like, that's interesting. There's no movements he's like, you could still see the dust on my desk. There's no slides. There's nothing. He goes, I swear it was turned towards me. Second night, right? Brother's still gone. Wakes up in the middle of the night. Some may say 3 a.m. But wakes up in the middle of the night. Statue's facing him.
Hell no.
And he's like,
so it moved again?
Moved again. Wake up the next morning, facing straight. Happens for one more night. And then he's like, okay, I need to talk to my parents. So he goes and talks to his parents. Hey, this is going on. And, parents trying to justify it. Trying to say, hey, it's not a big deal. You're fine or whatever. It's okay.
It's probably just a dream. Dude, night 2, that thing would have gotten the drawer. I'd be like, nope.
And then he wakes up the 5th morning. Or the next morning, sorry. He wakes up the next morning. And similar thing happens, right? So the first time, 3 times in a row, it'd move, go back the right way. The next morning he wakes up, or next in the middle of the night, wakes up facing him. He's like, I'm like, how did you get any sleep? Because this is like 5 days in a row of waking up in the middle of the night. But next morning,
Just stare at it and just like.
I am all powerful now.
He watches it as it turns around.
It runs away. It like tilts away.
Covers it like the Russian dolls.
Speaking of scary like toys, Russian dolls would be terrifying to be haunted. There's like 80 against you instead of just one thing. So 4th night, same thing happens. Wakes up, it's facing him, and he's just like, this is so weird. And he's young, like you're not like, I don't feel like you automatically assume, or most people automatically assume like sinister like involvement. For me, I'm like, I go there pretty quickly. I feel like, but I don't know if everyone else does. But then it's happened 4 nights in a row or whatever. Wakes up that morning, the statue's facing him. It's not facing straight anymore. And he's just like, and his brother's out of town. Like there's like no one who could be messing with him. He's like, that's so weird. Brother, I think, gets home in like a day or so. So the next night, he's like, I don't want to deal with this again alone. He just kind of, he's tired. He hasn't slept well. He has their family dog come in, and so he sleeps on the couch. Wakes up again in the middle of the night, and his dog is just growling at his room. Just
facing his door,
facing
the door
his
of his
door,
room.
just low guttural, just kind of the build up growl or whatever. And he says that went on as long until he fell asleep. He didn't know how long it was going. The dog was growling, but it was long enough to where he saw it, heard it, and then he just dozed off again. So brother gets home, and he's trying to tell his brother, he's like, hey, like, this has been happening to me again. No slide marks. It's like you move the Santo Nino. There's like no dust in the middle, right? Like doesn't seem to have been moved. So his brother's just like punking him as an older brother would, calling him names, and just like, you gotta be braver or whatever. So that night they go to bed. Again, he wakes up in the middle of the night. But this time the statue isn't facing him. It's like at the foot of his bed.
Nope.
And so he's like, yeah, no. And so he says, as fast as I could, I just hit the floor and then jumped on my brother's bed. It was like, I don't care what my brother, it seemed like his brother like picked on him and like would like ruffle him up a little bit. And so, thinking about that consequence.
He's like, I'd rather take a fist than this freaking. How big is the statue too?
It's like 3 feet high. Oh, sorry.
I was like, what the fuck? That's like, that's an 8-year-old Filipino.
It was like 2 feet high. That's still pretty good. That's still pretty good.
I was thinking like a chess piece.
It's like this.
Damn.
I don't know. Okay, it's like a foot and a half, 2 feet.
That's when I go 5 yards back, 2 to the left, and then try to go for the 3-point conversion.
Just jump back 3 times.
That's still terrifying. So this statue's on his bed. He's like, I'd rather get my ass whooped by my brother.
And then as he hops over to his brother's bed, his brother's like, what the hell? You know, freaking out. Like, what are you doing? You know, it's freaking, it's the middle of the night. And then he's like trying to say, but he doesn't say anything. And he looks at it and his brother's face immediately just goes white. And then so the little brother's looking at his older brother's face, just white and pale. And then he turns. And as he turns, the Santo Niño statue is in between their beds.
Oh!
And I only laugh because I'm terrified. And so the brother immediately like throws a blanket, wraps it up, puts it like in the corner, is like, we're not dealing with this. Next morning, they take it out, go to a pit in the school, lights it on fire. He said like it took a while to like light, like it was kind of sketchy, like it was really windy and just like adding
The
to that.
elements
you know,
were like, no,
don't destroy this. You know, their dog, when they were running out, the dog was just like barking at the blanket super viciously. And
dude, it's like, why, baby Jesus, do you like this?
Well, that's crazy because the Santo Niño statue wasn't big at one point, but what made it big in that region of the Philippines is there was a church filled with these statues, and it caught on fire. Everything burned except for the Santo
Time
Niños.
out. Hold on. So we are recording in a cabin up in the woods, and Kevin, who doesn't get scared easily,
he's
Just
shaking.
stopped us?
He's shaking in fear right now.
because he just saw someone looking into our window. Hold on.
Oh, what a face in our window! Did our backlight not turn on?
In the door, in this one. I swear I saw it just peek through.
Because our auto light would turn on.
Oh, that makes sense.
demon.
No, it's probably just my imagination because I was getting.
Yeah, you're not seeing faces in here.
Was it a little Santa Niño?
Yeah, little baby Jesus, 8 pounds, 6 ounce.
But it's one of those creepy looking statues. He doesn't look like sweet.
Go back. Start again. So, you said there was a church full of little Santa Niños?
Yeah.
Sorry, we just ran out back, turned on the light. There's no one back there. They also have a sensor light, so if someone was back there, it would go on, but...
Weird things do happen. This cabin is very creaky and like noisy, and it's low too, so
I feel
people can
so
see in very easily.
exposed right now. We have windows all around us
With
in the dark
white
woods.
curtains.
Yeah, in
So
the
they're
dark
see-through.
woods.
And naturally, Sean was the first one, walks over to the door real quick, like, turns on the light, opens the door real quick, and stands outside.
That's why I told Sean. I looked over and I told him, I was like, I think I just saw somebody looking in your window.
That's Sean. If you follow our Instagram and you saw our profiles of each other that we posted this week, Sean is our skeptic, but wants to know. Yeah, he's our tank.
Some may say
He wants to
Mack
know
Truck.
the truth.
Okay.
Tell us
Back
about the
to
Santo
story.
Niño statues in the church. That was super interesting.
No, it was just the Santo Niño became more prominent than everything else. I mean, not only because it's Jesus, but there was a church full of these statues. Church caught fire. Everything burnt down. All the statues were destroyed except for the Santo Niño one. It was perfect. So it's interesting that
Wild. That makes sense then. They have like Sinulog and all these huge. I didn't know that. That's crazy.
So they eventually were able to burn it?
So yeah, so eventually it took a while to light it. He said like 4 or 5 times they're trying to get it lit. I don't know what they were using to light it, but they threw it in like a ditch. If you've ever been to the Philippines, like there's just ditches around, and I imagine where they lived in the school, it was more rural, so you can kind of just burn stuff whenever. And so they're doing that, they're burning it. And what's crazy too is after that happened, because they did it just on the edge of their school, years later, like people since then have just been hearing have had weird occurrences at that school, like whether they're hearing voices or they're seeing things, like, and that wasn't really happening before the school.
Dude, they light it on fire. They throw it face down. It lands in the mud face down on fire. And as it's burning and crumbling, it turns and faces them.
That would be wild. That's what I should have said.
And then slow strip.
And But no, yeah, super wild. And what's crazy too is like afterwards that school was basically haunted and they had other people talking about their crazy experiences from it. But man, if that freaking
That's crazy, dude.
So that was a good round. I am excited though to share my. So for the clue for my next one, I'm just gonna say one word, and that's ça passe. And you say Naboule.
That's not a real word.
Naboule.
Naboule.
Ça passe.
Naboule.
Okay, that's a clue for next episode. But yeah, awesome stories.
Yeah.
Be careful what you let into your life, what you give permission. And there's a lot of different ways you can give things permission. With vampires, the classic vampire, it's they have to ask to enter your home, and you have to allow them to enter. Other things get in different ways, whether it's you exploring or searching out how to lucid dream or leave your body. I know that names have a lot of power. So a lot of the times if something is terrorizing you, if you can discover the name of that entity, then you have all the power. So just be aware of what you get permission, what you give permission in your life.
Should we do some shout outs? Do we have any shout outs?
Can I shout out?
Yeah.
My mom started listening to the podcast.
What?
Yeah.
Wild. That's way
So
cool.
hey, mom.
Watch all them titty jokes, boys.
Yeah, thank you for your support so far. As always, if you have any stories, we're looking for them. We're excited to hear your experiences. Please send them via Instagram, through the DMs, or email them, which would probably be a little bit better. Either or. Our email is 3ampodcaststories@gmail.com.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for having me on, you guys.
No
Always.
worries. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for
coming.
coming, Kevin.
This is our last night in this area.
Damn,
New
this is
studio.
our last night in the
New
cabin.
studio.
We're moving.
We're moving to our more advanced studio next week, so bigger and brighter things coming along.
Yeah. In the meantime, trust your gut, watch your back, take care of each other.
Hey, I like that.